At 69 years old, I thought I knew everything about my husband of 27 years. I was wrong. The private investigator I hired for peace of mind sat across from me at my kitchen table in Asheville, North Carolina, sliding a manila folder toward me with trembling hands. Inside was a marriage license, dated 1998, my husband's signature, another woman's name. He looked at me and said words I'll never forget. "Ma'am, you just became very rich." Because what I was about to discover wasn't just betrayal, it was bigamy. And in our state, that meant everything he owned, everything we built together, and everything he was hiding with her. It was all mine now. My name is Carolyn Mitchell, and this is the story of how one moment of intuition saved me from spending my final years living a lie. Before I continue, I need to know I'm not alone in this. If you're watching this, please take a moment and comment below. Where are you watching from? What state? What country? Because what happened to me could happen to anyone, anywhere. And I need you to know you're not crazy for trusting your gut. Let me take you back to where this all started. It was March 2024. Spring was just beginning to show itself in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I was sitting in my sunroom drinking coffee when I realized something that made my blood run cold. I couldn't remember the last time my husband, Thomas, had looked me in the eye when he said, "I love you." 50 years of life experience teaches you things. It teaches you that when a man who used to come home at 5:30 p.m. suddenly has client dinners 3 nights a week, something's wrong. When a man who never cared about his phone suddenly sleeps with it under his pillow, something's wrong. When a man who spent 27 years being predictable suddenly becomes mysterious, something is very, very wrong. My daughter Jennifer thought I was being paranoid. "Mom, Dad's just stressed about retirement planning," she said when I called her. "You're about to turn 70. Maybe you're just overthinking things." But here's what 69 years on this earth teaches you. Women aren't paranoid. We're perceptive. There's a difference. Thomas was a commercial real estate developer. Successful. Charming. The kind of man who could sell ice to an Eskimo, as they say. We lived in a beautiful home in the mountains, took 2 vacations a year, and from the outside, we were the picture of a comfortable retirement-age couple. But something was eating at me. Little things that added up. The way he'd close his laptop when I walked into the room, the weekend property inspections that seemed to take longer and longer, the fact that our joint bank account showed regular withdrawals I couldn't quite place. I'm not a suspicious person by nature, but I'm also not a fool. So on a Tuesday morning in late March, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the yellow pages. Yes, I still use the phone book, and I looked up. Private investigators. His name was Frank Delgado, and his office was above an insurance agency downtown. Not fancy, not flashy, just a plain door with frosted glass and his name painted in block letters. I almost turned around 3 times before I knocked. "Come in," a voice called. Frank Delgado was not what I expected. Maybe mid-50s, gray at the temples, wearing reading glasses and a rumpled button-down shirt. He looked like somebody's uncle. Not a private investigator. Somehow, that made me feel better. "Mrs. Mitchell?" He stood up, extending his hand. "Please, sit down. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I'm not even sure I should be here." "Most people feel that way," he said gently, sitting back down. "Why don't you tell me what brought you in today?" So I did. I told him about the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way Thomas had become a stranger in our own home. I told him about the unexplained expenses and the gut feeling that had been growing in my stomach for months. Frank listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "How long have you been married?" he asked. 27 years. Second marriage for both of us." "Children together?" "No. I have a daughter from my first marriage, Jennifer. She's 42. Thomas has a son from his first marriage, David, but they're not close. Estranged, really." Frank nodded. And you said your husband is in commercial real estate? Yes, Mitchell Development Group. He's done very well over the years. Properties in the area? Several. Mostly in Asheville and surrounding counties. Some residential rentals, some commercial spaces. Frank leaned back in his chair, studying me over his reading glasses. Mrs. Mitchell, Carolyn, I'm going to be straight with you. About 70% of the time when someone comes in here with the concerns you're describing, their instincts are correct. The question is, are you prepared for what we might find? My hands were shaking. I clasped them together in my lap. I need to know the truth. Even if the truth is painful? I'm 69 years old, Mr. Delgado. I don't have time for pretty lies anymore. Something in his expression softened. All right, here's how this works. I'll conduct surveillance, run background checks, financial record searches. All legal, all above board. My retainer is $3,000, and that covers approximately 30 hours of work. If this goes beyond that, we'll discuss additional fees. I'll provide you with regular updates, and everything I find will be documented with photos, timestamps, everything you'd need if this ends up in court. Does that sound acceptable? $3,000. It was a lot of money, but so was 27 years of my life. When can you start? I can start tomorrow. But Carolyn, before you write that check, are you absolutely sure you want to know? Because once we open this door, there's no closing it again. I took out my checkbook. My hand was steady now. I'm sure. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that decision, was going to change everything. Frank called me 4 days later. Carolyn, we need to meet, not over the phone. My heart dropped. You found something. I found something. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I was there within the hour. Frank had photographs spread across his desk, time-stamped, dated, printed on glossy paper. My husband's car. My husband walking into restaurants. My husband with a woman. She was younger than me, maybe late 50s, blonde, attractive. In one photo, they were holding hands across a table at a restaurant I'd never been to. In another, they were getting into his car together outside what looked like a hotel. Her name is Patricia Chambers, Frank said quietly. She lives in Hendersonville, about 30 minutes from here. She's a real estate agent, works independently, but from what I can tell, your husband has referred several clients to her over the years. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small. How long? I managed to ask. I don't know yet, but Carolyn... Frank hesitated. There's more. I ran a background check on Ms. Chambers, and I found something that doesn't add up. According to public records, she goes by Patricia Chambers professionally, but her legal name is Patricia Mitchell. The room tilted. Mitchell? Same last name as your husband. Now, it could be a coincidence. Mitchell is a common name, or it could be from a previous marriage. But given what I'm seeing in these photos, I thought you should know. I stared at the photographs, at the woman who shared my husband's last name, at the way Thomas smiled at her, the way he used to smile at me 27 years ago. I want you to dig deeper, I said. I want to know everything, where she lives, where she works, how long they've known each other, everything. Carolyn, are you sure? This is going to cost... I don't care what it costs. I need to know who my husband really is. Frank nodded slowly. All right, give me a week. I drove home in a daze. Thomas was sitting in the living room watching television when I walked in. Hey, honey, he said, barely looking up. Where have you been? Just running errands. The lie came easily. Too easily. I've got a property showing in Greenville tomorrow. Probably won't be home until late. Of course, I said. Greenville was in the opposite direction from Hendersonville. I went upstairs to our bedroom where we'd slept side by side for 27 years, and I stood in the closet looking at his clothes, his shoes, his ties. Everything looked the same. But now I was seeing it all through different eyes. Who was this man I'd married? What else had he been hiding? I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Thomas in the dark, listening to him breathe, wondering if the woman in those photographs had ever done the same thing, wondering how much of my life had been a lie. When Frank called 8 days later, his voice was different, tense, urgent. "Carolyn, I need you to come to my office right now, and you might want to bring someone with you, a friend, your daughter, someone." "Why? What did you find?" "Not over the phone. Please, just come." I called Jennifer. She was working in Charlotte, 2 hours away, but something in my voice must have frightened her, because she said she'd get in the car immediately. I got to Frank's office first. He had 2 folders on his desk now, both thick with papers. "Sit down," he said. He wasn't making eye contact. "Just tell me, is he having an affair?" "Carolyn." Frank took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "It's so much worse than an affair." The door opened. Jennifer rushed in, still wearing her work clothes, her face pale. "Mom, what's going on?" Frank waited until we were both seated. Then he opened the first folder. "Patricia Chambers is not your husband's mistress," he said quietly. "She's his wife." The words didn't make sense. "I'm his wife. You're both his wife." Frank slid a document across the desk. "This is a marriage license. Thomas Mitchell and Patricia Ann Chambers, dated June 14th, 1998, registered in Henderson County, North Carolina." I stared at the paper. Thomas's signature clear as day, a woman's signature beside it. A date that was 3 years before he married me. "That's impossible," Jennifer whispered. "They got married in 2001. I was at the wedding." "Your mother got married in 2001, Frank said gently. "But Thomas was already married. He never divorced Patricia, which means his marriage to your mother was never legal. Carolyn, your husband is a bigamist." The room was spinning. 27 years of marriage that wasn't real. "There's more," Frank said. He opened the second folder. "I did a deep dive into property records. Thomas doesn't just have properties here in Asheville. He has properties registered under Patricia's name in Hendersonville. A house, a very nice house, worth approximately $1.2 million. He laid out more documents. Deeds, tax records, photographs. Patricia Mitchell lives in that house full-time, has since 1998. Your husband splits his time between both homes. When he tells you he's at property showings or client meetings, he's with her. They have a life together, Carolyn, a complete life. Neighbors think they're a normal married couple." Jennifer was crying. I felt numb. "How is this possible?" I asked. "How could no one know?" "Henderson County and Buncombe County have separate recording systems," Frank explained. "Unless someone specifically searched both counties, it wouldn't show up. And why would anyone look? He's been careful, very careful. He maintains separate finances for each household, uses his business accounts to muddy the paper trail. If you hadn't hired me, you probably never would have known." I looked at my daughter, at Frank, at the documents spread across the desk, proving that my entire adult life had been built on a lie. "What do I do?" I whispered. Frank's expression was grim. "First thing Monday morning, we call a lawyer." I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Jennifer drove us to a hotel, and we sat up until 3 in the morning trying to process what we'd learned. "Mom, this is insane," Jennifer kept saying. "This is completely insane. How did he manage this for 27 years? I thought about all the late nights, the business trips, the weekends he spent managing properties. I'd trusted him completely, never questioned him. Why would I? "What about his son?" Jennifer asked suddenly. "David, does he know?" "I don't know. They've been estranged for years. Thomas always said it was because David couldn't accept our marriage after his mother died." "When did Thomas's first wife die?" We looked at each other. I'd never questioned it. "Thomas told me she died of cancer in 1997, before we met. We'd met in 2000 at a charity fundraiser, started dating in 2001, got married that same year. But if he married Patricia in 1998, "Mom," Jennifer said slowly, "what if his first wife didn't die? What if Patricia is his first wife?" The room went cold. Sunday was a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that marriage license. I saw the photos of Thomas and Patricia walking hand in hand. I thought about every anniversary we'd celebrated, every "I love you," every promise he'd made. All of it was a lie. Monday morning, Frank introduced me to his attorney friend, Elizabeth Warren. No relation to the senator, she joked, trying to lighten the mood. It didn't work. "Mrs. Mitchell," Elizabeth said, "what your husband has done is not just morally wrong. It's a felony. Bigamy is a Class 1 felony in North Carolina. He could face jail time." "I don't care about jail time," I said. My voice sounded flat, emotionless. "I care about my life. I care about the house we live in, the money in our accounts, the 27 years I gave him." Elizabeth nodded. "Here's the good news, if we can call it that. Because your marriage was never legal. Because he was already married. You're entitled to compensation. North Carolina law allows for alienation of affection and criminal conversation claims. Plus, there's fraud, possibly embezzlement if he used joint funds for his other household. And then there's the big one." She leaned forward. "In cases of bigamy, the defrauded spouse has legal grounds to claim all marital assets. Not half, all. Every property, every bank account, every asset he acquired during the course of the bigamous marriage can be considered proceeds of fraud." "What does that mean in real terms?" Jennifer asked. "It means everything he owns with your mother, the house in Asheville, the joint, accounts, the business assets registered jointly. It's all hers. But more than that, everything he owns with Patricia might also be claimable, because that marriage was being maintained through fraudulent means. The house in Hendersonville, the properties in Patricia's name, if we can prove he used joint funds or committed fraud to maintain that household, your mother could make a claim on those assets too." I felt something stirring inside me, not hope exactly, something colder, harder. "How do we prove it?" Elizabeth smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "We confront him, and we record everything." The plan was simple but terrifying. I would go home Tuesday evening, act completely normal, and then Wednesday morning after Thomas left for work, Frank would follow him. Elizabeth would be with me, and we'd review every document I could access. Bank statements, property deeds, business records, everything. Tuesday evening was the hardest thing I've ever done. I made dinner. We ate together. Thomas told me about his day. I smiled and nodded and felt like I was in a play, reading lines that someone else had written. "You seem quiet," he said. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied. "I think I might be coming down with something." "Well, don't push yourself," he said, patting my hand. The touch made my skin crawl. "I've got an early meeting in Greenville tomorrow anyway. Property showing for a potential buyer. Big commercial deal." Greenville. He wasn't going to Greenville. He was going to Hendersonville, to Patricia, to his real wife. I excused myself and went to bed early. Lay in the dark listening to him move around downstairs. Heard him on the phone, voice low. Was he talking to her? Planning his day with his other family? Wednesday morning, Thomas left at 7:00 a.m. sharp. By 7:30, Elizabeth was at my door. "Show me everything," she said. We started in Thomas's office. His filing cabinets were locked, but I knew where he kept the key, behind a picture frame of all places. Inside were years of documents, property holdings, business contracts, financial statements. Elizabeth photographed everything with her phone. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a property deed. "This commercial building downtown, purchased in 2003, but the down payment came from an account in Patricia's name." She pulled out more documents. "This shopping center in Black Mountain, purchased jointly by Thomas and Patricia in 2005. But look at these renovation receipts, paid from your joint checking account with Thomas." "What does that mean?" "It means he was using your money to improve properties he owned with her. That's fraud, Carolyn. Clear-cut fraud. We spent 4 hours going through documents. The picture that emerged was staggering. Thomas had built an empire on deception. He'd used money from one household to fund the other. He'd put properties in Patricia's name, but pay for them with funds from our joint accounts. He'd declared business expenses that were actually personal purchases for his other home. The house in Hendersonville, Elizabeth said, reading from a tax document, purchased in 1998 for $350,000, now worth $1.2 million. But look at these records. Major renovations in 2008, 2014, and 2019. Guess where the money came from? She showed me bank statements, withdrawals from our home equity line of credit, transfers from our investment accounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. He used your money to build a palace for his other wife, Elizabeth said quietly, and you never knew. My hands were shaking. How much are we talking about? Total? Elizabeth did some quick calculations on her legal pad. Conservative estimate? Between the properties, the business assets, the improvements he funded with your money, we're looking at somewhere between $8 and $12 million. My God. Carolyn, Elizabeth said, meeting my eyes, when I said you just became very rich, I meant it. Thomas Mitchell is about to lose everything. We set the confrontation for Friday evening. Elizabeth wanted everything documented, everything recorded. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, meaning I could record conversations without Thomas's knowledge. I wore a wire, like something out of a movie, except this was my real life, my real marriage, my real heartbreak. Thomas came home at 6 p.m. whistling, actually whistling. He kissed my cheek like he'd done 1,000 times before. Good day? I asked, my voice steady, calm. Great day. Close the Greenville deal. That property is going to make us a fortune, honey. Us, he said, us. Like we were a team. Like he hadn't been lying to me for 27 years. Thomas, can we talk? In the living room? Something in my tone made him pause. Sure. Is everything all right? We sat down. I had the manila folder in my lap, the one Frank had given me. Inside were copies of everything. The marriage license, the property deeds, the photographs. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to tell me the truth. Of course. What's wrong? Who is Patricia Mitchell? I watched the color drain from his face, watched him try to recover, to put on the mask he'd been wearing for decades. Patricia. Honey, I've worked with dozens of agents named Patricia over the years. Which one are you? Patricia Mitchell, your wife. Silence. The kind of silence that's so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. I don't know what you're talking about. I opened the folder, slid the marriage license across the coffee table. His face went white, then gray. He looked like he might be sick. Where did you get that? Answer the question. Is Patricia Chambers your wife? Carolyn, let me explain. Yes or no, is Patricia Mitchell, Patricia Chambers, your wife? Before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask something. If this story is keeping, you on the edge of your seat, if you need to know how this ends, please take 1 second and click that subscribe button below, because what my husband said next changed everything, and I want to make sure you're here for the whole truth. Thomas stood up, paced to the window, his back to me. Yes, he finally said. Yes, she's my wife. 27 years. 27 years, and he'd just admitted it like he was confessing to forgetting to take out the trash. How long? Since 1998. Before me. Before you. I felt strangely calm. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I'd already cried all the tears I had. Did you ever love me? I asked. Was any of it real? He turned around then, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Panic. Carolyn, it's complicated. Yes, I love you, both of you. You have to understand, when Patricia and I got married, we were young. It wasn't working. But her father had invested in my business, and if I divorced her, he was going to pull his funding. I would have lost everything. So you committed bigamy instead. I was going to fix it. I was going to divorce her eventually, but then the business took off, and things got complicated, and you just decided to keep both wives? My voice was rising now. 27 years, Thomas. 27 years you let me believe I was your wife. I wore your ring. I took your name. I built a life with you. You are my wife. No. I stood up. I'm not. I never was. Our marriage was never legal. Every anniversary we celebrated was a lie. Every time you said, I love you, a lie. Carolyn, please. Where is she now? Patricia? Does she know about me? The look on his face was answer enough. She knows, I said slowly. She's always known, hasn't she? It's not like that. What is it like, Thomas? Explain it to me. Explain how you've been living two completely separate lives for 27 years. Where were you really going when you said you had business trips? When you had those late-night client meetings? He sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. Sometimes I was with Patricia. Sometimes I really was working. Carolyn, you have to believe me. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Every single day for 27 years, you hurt me. You stole my life. I gave you a good life, a beautiful home, financial security, with money that wasn't even yours to give. I threw the property records at him. You used our joint funds to pay for her house. Our money, Thomas. You stole from me to support your other family. He picked up the documents, scanning them, his face going from white to red. Who gave you these? That doesn't matter. What matters is that I know everything now. I know about the house in Hendersonville. I know about the properties in her name. I know about every lie, every deception, every dollar you stole from me. I didn't steal. Yes, you did. I was shouting now, years of trust and love turning into rage. You committed fraud, Thomas. You committed bigamy. You're a criminal. He stood up, and for the first time in 27 years, I was afraid of him. You need to calm down, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in decades. If you go public with this, if you go to the police, you'll destroy everything. The business, both houses, my reputation. Your reputation? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your reputation. Thomas, you're a bigamist. You've been committing a felony for 27 years. You've defrauded me out of millions of dollars. And you're worried about your reputation. I'm worried about you, he shouted. If this comes out, you'll be humiliated. Everyone will know. Your friends, your family, Jennifer. Jennifer already knows. My lawyer knows. My private investigator knows. And soon everyone else will know too. His face went pale again. Lawyer? I pulled out my phone, made a show of checking the time. She should be serving Patricia with papers right about now, actually. What did you do? What I should have done the first time I suspected something was wrong. I protected myself. Thomas lunged for me, grabbed my arm. You can't do this. Carolyn, please, we can work this out. We can keep this quiet. I'll divorce Patricia. I'll make it right. Let go of me. We can fix this. Just don't go to the police. Please, I'm begging you. Let go of me or I'm calling 911. He released my arm like I'd burned him. It's over, Thomas. The lies, the double life, all of it. Over. You're making a mistake. No, I said quietly. I made a mistake 27 years ago when I said I do to a man who was already married. But I'm fixing that mistake now. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Thomas was arrested on bigamy charges the following Monday. The look on his face when the police showed up at his office, I wasn't there to see it, but Jennifer was, and she said he finally looked like what he was, a man whose lies had caught up with him. Patricia tried to contact me, called my phone 14 times in one day, left voicemails crying, saying she didn't know, that Thomas had told her I knew about her, that we had some kind of arrangement. Elizabeth told me not to engage. Everything would be handled through lawyers now. The discovery process was brutal. Every document, every bank statement, every lie laid out in black and white. The prosecutors built their case with precision. Thomas had been using business accounts to fund both households. He'd committed wire fraud, tax fraud, identity fraud. The bigamy was just the beginning. Elizabeth filed civil suits on my behalf. Fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conversion of funds. The numbers kept getting bigger. The house in Asheville is worth $2.1 million, Elizabeth explained at one of our many meetings. Fully paid off. And since your marriage was never legal, you can claim sole ownership. The business assets are more complicated, but we're estimating your share at around $4 million. Then there's the house in Hendersonville. Because Thomas used your funds for the down payment and renovations. You have a legitimate claim there, too. Patricia is fighting it, but the paper trail is clear. What about Patricia? I asked. Does she get anything? Elizabeth's smile was sharp. Patricia was complicit in the fraud. She knew you existed. She knew Thomas was committing bigamy. She benefited financially from funds that were stolen from you. She's lucky if she walks away with the clothes on her back. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I had to testify. Had to sit in that courtroom and tell our story, my story, to a room full of strangers. Had to look at Thomas in his expensive suit, his lawyer whispering in his ear, and remember all the years I'd loved him. His defense was that he'd meant to divorce Patricia, but life got complicated. That he'd loved both of us. That he'd provided well for both households and no one had suffered financially. The prosecutor tore him apart. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it true that you used Mrs. Mitchell's money from joint accounts she contributed to purchase property in Ms. Chambers' name? It wasn't like that. Yes or no, Mr. Mitchell? Yes, but... And isn't it true that you claimed tax deductions for home office expenses on the Hendersonville property, which you told the IRS was your primary residence, while simultaneously living in Asheville and claiming that property as your primary residence on different tax forms? I can explain. Please do explain how you managed to have 2 primary residences at the same time. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts, bigamy, fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion. The judge sentenced him to 7 years in federal prison, ordered him to pay restitution, ordered the forfeiture of assets, and then came the civil judgment. Elizabeth stood in my living room now, legally mine, with the final settlement papers. Carolyn, you need to sit down. The total came to $11.7 million. The Asheville house, the Hendersonville house, 3 commercial properties, Thomas's share of the business, investment accounts, retirement funds, everything. Patricia got nothing. The court ruled she'd been complicit in the fraud. Thomas's son, David, who I finally tracked down, had been estranged from his father for 15 years. Turned out he'd known about both marriages and wanted nothing to do with either of us. Jennifer helped me through those first few months. The shock, the grief, the strange feeling of being free and wealthy and utterly betrayed all at once. "Mom," she said one evening, sitting with me on the deck of my mountain home, "what are you going to do now?" I looked out at the Blue Ridge Mountains, at the view I'd loved for 27 years without really seeing it. "Live," I said simply. "Really live." And I have. I sold the Hendersonville house. Couldn't stand the thought of keeping anything that had been Patricia's. Donated a portion of the settlement to organizations that help women escape fraudulent relationships. Set up a trust fund for Jennifer and her kids. The private investigator fee of $3,000 was the best money I ever spent. Frank Delgado saved my life in more ways than one. He showed me that trusting my instincts wasn't paranoia. It was survival. Thomas is in federal prison. Minimum security, but still prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 5 years. He's written me letters. I've burned every single one without reading them. Patricia moved to Florida, last I heard. The court ruled our marriage null and void from the beginning, which meant she was technically still married to him when he went to prison. She filed for divorce 6 months after his sentencing. Can't say I blame her. At 70 years old now, I'm finally living the life I should have been living all along. I travel. I spend time with my grandchildren. I wake up every morning in a house that's completely mine, with no secrets, no lies, no one stealing my life while I sleep beside them. People ask me if I'm bitter, if I'm angry, if I hate him. The truth is more complicated than that. I grieve the 27 years I lost. I'm angry at the betrayal, but I'm not bitter. Bitterness would mean letting Thomas steal even more of my life, and I've decided he's taken enough. What he couldn't steal was my strength, my ability to trust my gut, my willingness to fight for the truth, no matter how painful. To every woman watching this, and I hope you're still here with me. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're not overreacting. Trust yourself. Investigate. Ask questions. Demand truth. Because at 69, 70, 75, at any age, you deserve to know who you're sharing your life with. You deserve honesty. You deserve real love, not a performance. My name is Carolyn Mitchell, though I'm legally changing it back to my maiden name, Carolyn Morrison. This was my story, and if it helps even one person trust their instincts and reclaim their truth, then every painful moment was worth sharing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing me.